If you factor any or all of your loads, you're probably aware it is a little complicated to keep track of all your expenses, such as your billing fees, your reserve account balance that you have with the factoring company, which trips have been sent over to the factoring company. So we did put something together here at Truckwin to help you keep track of that information. Before starting, I would recommend going to our website, which is www.gotruckwin.com, to the help section, and printing out on the PDF section. There is a PDF on factoring loads in Truckwin Connect. It will be helpful to have this printed out or up on the screen while you watch the video so you can kind of follow along. So with that, we'll go ahead and get started. In Connect, as far as billing goes, you will process your freight bill just as you normally would. So we're going to go into freight billing, and I'm going to go to enter update invoices. And we're going to go ahead and process this trip for $1,000. So I'm going to send this over to the factoring company. So what I do is I'd go ahead and, assuming that you need to print it, go to View Print Bills. And we'll go ahead and print. Once I've printed it, I will go ahead and post it. And so I highlight that, and I'll come down and do Prepare Posting. This shows me the entry it's going to make. It's going to post into my accounts receivable and my revenue account. So I'm going to do Post One Invoice. So now I've moved that invoice through freight billing. One quick thing to note while we're in here, if you need to change the payment address on your freight bills to reflect your factoring company, you would do that up under Maintenance. And you will see Payment Address for Customers. This is where you can put your company if you're not factoring a load. If you need it to reflect the factoring company, that's where you would enter that in, and then it will in turn print in the upper left-hand corner. So once you have posted your freight billing, it's going to travel into accounts receivable. And if you've sent that invoice off to the factoring company, it is no longer your receivable because you have sold it. So at that point, we need to get that off of your book so it doesn't show as a receivable anymore. To do that, you're going to go to Outstanding Invoices, and we'll find the one that we just sent over. It's probably at the bottom. So this is the invoice that I had just sent over to the factoring company. So I'm going to go to Cash Receipt, just like I would process a normal cash receipt for it. There is going to be one different thing I do on this screen than I would normally do if I was entering a regular cash receipt. What that is right here where it says cash or debit account, it's defaulted to our checking account. Now, we're not going to actually be hitting anything in our checking account yet. So what we're going to do is change this to reflect our revenue account, which by default is 4010. So I'm going to change that there. The rest of the screen I would fill out as I normally would. So reference number is going to be check number, and there is no check number. So a lot of people will use some sort of date format. For example, I could do 3/25/19. So when I visually look at that, I know it's from today. The amount is going to be the full amount of the invoice. Do not subtract any type of billing fees or reserve at this point. It'll be the full amount of the invoice. And I'm going to click on Apply Cash from Grid. I'm going to come down and select the invoice I'd like to apply it to. And you can see that I now have 0 remaining balance. I'm going to come down and hit Accept and Save. If I had any more, I would go ahead and hit Yes and process the rest of them. We'll assume I just sent this one load over today. So do you want to add additional cash receipts? We'll say no. And do I want to proceed posting? I'm going to say yes. So it's going to show me all of the invoices that I have applied. I would verify my total is correct. And I would go ahead and hit begin posting now. Before I hit that, you can see what this is going to do is it's going to post a debit to our revenue account. And if you recall, our first step in billing was a credit to our revenue account. So this essentially is going to wash out the revenue account temporarily. You hit begin posting now. Okay, so now we've moved that invoice out of accounts receivable. The rest of this is going to take place in the general ledger. So we'll go ahead and go to the general ledger. And we're going to go ahead and utilize what we call the general ledger deposit. So you don't have to do a manual entry. It's just a little bit more visual. So if I click up on general ledger and go to general ledger deposit, it'll bring up my screen and the cash account will default in. Deposit number, again, I recommend using a date format, like 3/25/19 would be March 25th of 19. The deposit date's going to be the date that you receive this money into your bank account, or if it's a fuel account, the amount is going to be the amount that you received. So this is where the billing fees and reserve and stuff are going to come into play. So I'm going to type in $900, saying I got $900 for that $1,000 invoice I sent over. So what I'll want to do is come down to the bottom part of the screen. Department's always going to be 000. The account number for the fees, if I click on the drop down, I can click down to the account, which should be 8155. Sorry, 8150. And I'm going to want to enter in the debit side how much of the billing fees that was. And I like to type in a description just so I know what that line is for. And if I hit my tab key, I can go to the next line. The next line is where I'm going to book the reserve. Now, if I know what the account number is, I can simply type that in. Like, I know it's account 1215. And then also on the debit side, I'm going to type in how much was reserved from that $1,000 or however many you sent over. I'm going to change my description so I know that it was the reserve. And then the final line is going to be where I'm going to adjust that revenue back. So again, you can click from the drop down, or if you know that your revenue account is by default 4010, that's where we're going to put back that $1,000 of revenue. And I'm going to update that to say revenue. So now I've got my two expenses, my billing fees and my reserve. Well, I'll get the reserve back, and my $1,000 going to revenue. I'm going to go ahead and hit save. And I'm going to go ahead and post deposit. So that went ahead and booked my fees, booked my reserve, and also adjusted my revenue back. The final portion of it you won't probably do every day. It's going to be when you get a reserve payout. Some companies it's, for example, the 15th and the 30th. It may just be once a month. So whenever you get a payout from your factoring company, you'll want to book that as well. And how you'll do that, it's similar to what we just did. So you're going to go to General Ledger, and you're going to go to General Ledger Deposit. Again, deposit, I would use a date format, such as 3/25/19 would be like March 25th of 19. And let's say we're going to get $5,712 back for our reserve. And we say we got that on the 15th. So I'm going to change my deposit date so it reflects accordingly. And this is only going to entail one line. So this area down here, department number is always going to be 000. The account number, we're going to want to use the reserve account number that we've been posting all of our reserve that the factoring company's been keeping. So I'm going to do 1215. Again, you can click the drop down to view your list of accounts if you don't know it. And again, I like to type in a description, so I'm going to type in reserve payout. And then all that I need to do is come down and hit save. What that's going to do, it's going to pull this amount out of that receivable reserve account you have set up, and it's going to deposit that money into our default cash account, which is listed here, or your fuel account, whatever account you're using as your default. I'm going to go ahead and hit save and post deposit. And that is what you will be doing to make sure that the accounting is correct for your factoring transactions.